Live streaming is on.
Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Fielka. Today is October 8, 2021. We want to thank Concerned Medicine, the amazing Clinton Ignatoff, for being here today and helping us out. I'm sure Clinton's going to join us later. He's got a bicycle somewhere in his garage. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here with Mark Deuze. Did I pronounce it right?
Deuze, yeah, that's great.
Deuze. Thank you. Mark, it's an honor and a pleasure. You're calling in from Amsterdam, right?
That's where I am, right? Yeah, good to see you.
Good to see you. First question is, what's the best thing for a human being?
Love.
Oh my God, that is amazing. I know you're writing a book on that, right?
Yeah. I was cheating.
No, it's an amazing thing. Um, what's your favorite what's your favorite way of receiving information? How you receive information? What's your favorite way?
A hug.
Oh my God, that is amazing. Because people don't usually process that word as information, but that's really good. Why do you think humans collect or gather information?
To feel connected.
Yeah. And is this more innate or more invented, this need or want to collect information?
Well, I mean, of course, it's both, but I would say the baseline is innate. Yeah, we can't help
Based on,
ourselves.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mark, do thoughts create emotions?
Um, Thoughts turn our feelings into words, and the words, that's what we call emotions, right? When we say I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm upset, I'm happy, we are adding thoughts to things that we feel, and that's what we call emotions. But before they are emotions, there's all kinds of stuff happening in our bodies. So that's what's really happening, and then emotions are just the stuff that we apply words to. So our in a way, let me put it this way: our thoughts are our emotions.
It's great. One guy said you'd love. He played for Blue Cheer. You
Oh
know,
no, that's
no,
amazing.
he's an amazing guy. I can't think of his name, but he puts out research magazine, research publications. V Vale. I says, "Do thoughts create emotions?" He goes, "Emotions create emotions."
Yeah, very good point.
Can humans think without language?
Yeah,
Is thinking more innate or more invented?
thinking is invented. The way we understand it now, that's an invention. Like we use the word cognition for thinking, and I think cognition is a construct. It's something we came up with. But I mean, our body and nature and the cosmos, they're already thinking without us being aware of it. So we're just part
Wow.
of that.
Wow, you anticipated a question there. That's good. You must have ESP. You have ESP?
Do I? I wish we all had. Maybe at some point we did. I don't know.
No, but do you think you have ESP?
No, no,
No.
no. I
Okay.
wish. No, that's more wishful thought than an actual one, I think.
Yeah. I don't know what I think until I fill in the blank.
I don't know until what I think until I feel it.
Yeah. Yeah, because McLuhan says, I don't know what I think until I say it. Joan Didion said, I don't know what I think until I write it.
Hmm. Comes close. Yeah.
Yeah. Another guy said, I don't know what I think until I think it.
Ah, that's a cop out. It's good, but it's
That I said, I don't know what I think until I ask someone else what I think. That's the worst cop out. So Chomsky says that language is not just words, it's
Mhm.
culture, a tradition, a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is.
Mhm.
Mark, how do you cope when language breaks down? When language doesn't work, what do you do?
Um, well, that's the beauty of Chomsky's statement. I mean, you have all this other stuff that you then can tap into, like symbols, shared histories, shared sort of, I mean, visual language, obviously. And so there is a wealth of material out there beyond simply expressing yourself in words that offers opportunities to connect, and especially in our screen-driven culture. I mean, I mean, the first thing I'm thinking about right now is, you know, the whole world right now is watching and talking about Squid Game, this Korean television show that until 2 weeks ago nobody knew existed. And it so it's a distinctly sort of odd independent Korean production that somehow has provided the world with a shared narrative, and beyond language, really, because without subtitles, and if you don't speak Korean, you won't get it. But I mean, and a 9-year-old gets it, and an 81-year-old gets it, and they're both on the different sides of the planet. I mean, that's a beautiful example. Is that we don't even need language all that much.
Wow. So just give me a couple sentence description. It's an online interactive video game. What is it?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So Squid Game is basically just a 9-episode television show. It premiered on Netflix on September 21st, and at the moment, it's the #1 watched show in every single country that Netflix is active, which is 85 countries. It has completely overrun TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube with parodies and memes and people acting out scenes from the show. 9-year-old, 10-year-old kids are watching it inside of Roblox and Minecraft, even though it has a 16+ rating. And it's a very dark show. It's not even, you know, like simple fun. It's like an intense show, and the show is intended as a critique of capitalism. So it's like it's got a heavy-handed message too. But somehow the whole world at the moment is watching it and talking about it and remixing it and parodying it.
Yeah.
So it speaks to a media culture that we're all part of, that beyond language taps into such a fundamental theme or feeling, you know, call it what you want, that is truly amazing, actually. Like, it's an amazing phenomenon that we're witnessing at the moment.
Dude, you really summarized that great, and you taught me a lot. But you said one thing, it has a 16 rating. I didn't get that. What did that mean? Like, it's not
it's not supposed to be watched by anybody under the age of 16. So it's got some pretty violent scenes, and you know, people get killed in the show. So it's
then kids under 16 hijack it and slip it into Minecraft, and then they can watch it.
Exactly. Yep.
That's amazing. That's like us going to the grocery store and looking at men's hunting magazines as though they were Playboy, because they had a little bit of nudity. So we could, like, it's like, it basically breaks down to what W.C. Fields said when he was caught reading the Bible. He says, "Why are you reading the Bible?" He says, "I'm looking for loopholes."
You know, we all do that all the time, don't we?
Right. Yeah. Loopholes are the best. And one other thing, would you call the Squid Game phenomenon almost a variation on Esperanto?
Yeah, I mean, and that's the amazing thing, I think, about our media culture, right? That it's, at the same time, it can and often is incredibly particular. So it is, whatever we're watching or listening to or talking about is very particular to where we live, where we are, who we are, what sort of culture and shared narrative we're part of, whether we're, you know, white Americans or African Americans or Asian or Korean or whatever, and or you know, Dutch or from Amsterdam or all that kind of stuff. But then at the same time, we're part of a media culture where sometimes, and I think in the currently online environment, this happens much more than it used to, that we're tapping into narratives, a shared language, a shared frame of reference that is like instantly global.
Yeah.
And that it could be like entertainment, like this television show. It could be a political issue, like the hashtag Me Too or movement. It could be sports. I mean, it doesn't really matter, but that there are moments where we're all sort of, it's like everything sort of clicks. Yeah. And that is it's something I don't think you can prepare for, or like as a company, for example, plan. But when it happens, it's quite magical.
Yeah, I think McLuhan did it well, updating several of his percepts mid-career, and one of them was flipping Global Village into Global Theater. When Sputnik went up, as soon as we're all actors on the Global Theater. So, Mark, your observations of humans in general, again, it's both and it depends. Are humans more feeling beings or more thinking beings?
Feeling beings.
Yeah. These are two questions from Alan Turing in 1950. Is thinking a function of the soul?
Of course, it depends what you understand the soul to be, but let's go with it. Yes.
That is good. Can machines think?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
Happiness.
Does the brain more detect consciousness or create consciousness? Like, is consciousness there bubbling away and we're detecting it, or are we creating
it? We think we're detecting it, but we are creating it.
Wow, that is heavy. We think.
The reason why I'm saying that is that so before I became an academic, I was a music journalist. And so interviewing bands and everything. And I can't tell you how many times I sat down with some musician, whether it was like a famous star or a beginning sort of indie rock band or whatever. And they would always come up with these stories like, my music just comes to me. It's like I'm tapping into, they wouldn't say consciousness. Sometimes they would, but I'm tapping into something and it just flows through me. And I'm just a vehicle. I'm just a medium. I'm just a channel. And I'm just sitting there and thinking like, yeah, well, if that was true, then there will be a whole lot of people doing exactly what you do, but you don't. It's like, this is you that made this. And it just feels bigger than you. And which is a beautiful thing, don't get me wrong. But that's what I was thinking about when you asked that question. It's like we think we're tapping into something, but I think we're too modest. I mean, this is us, like creating it. I mean, that's the divine spark in all of us, right? And that's a bit scary sometimes. It's like, where did all of this come from? And but it's you, dude. It's like or girl. It's all you. It's like high five.
Dude, that's all right. We in California, we call women dudes too. My friend calls his mom. He calls his mom dude.
No,
yeah. You have to be careful of your word usage. I know what you're doing. That's fine. But I sort of want to go on a divert because again, you did ESP, and I'm going to just jump to this question because I usually ask it later. So it's exactly what you almost worded my question perfectly that I'm going to ask you. George Manupelli's a experimental film icon. He started his film festival in Ann Arbor, Michigan 60 years ago, and cinema's only 130 years old. His mantra is ignore yourself. Jonas Mekas, the East Coast like experimental film guy, was there is no self-expression. And Cecil Taylor, jazz pianist, said exactly what you said. He said, I'm just a vehicle and this just comes through me. So, Mark, my question is, again, these are stupid. I say, is it more? So you get what I'm after. I'm after your hunch and your impulse. By saying more, I know it's both and it depends. context. But is art making, music making more self-expression, or more you're a vehicle for whatever dominant technology or culture is present?
Yeah, I think I come back to what I said earlier, is that it feels like it's more, like it's, but it isn't. But I actually agree that there is no such thing as self-expression, in the sense that we don't have some kind of basic self that expresses itself. I mean, when we express ourselves, we express an amalgam of influences and thoughts and ideas and values and friendships and upbringing and ethnicity and gender and all that kind of stuff that shapes us. So in that sense, yes, we are tapping into something, but it's still us.
Yeah. It's amazing what you're touching on, because the guy from Negative Land told me Missy Elliott learned how to sing from car alarms. Ginger Baker, one of the greatest drummers of all time, says,
Absolutely.
"Where'd you get your drum style?" He says, "I was in London when they were bombing. Boom, 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 boom." It's like he just took that sensibility and moved it to the James Brown drummer, same thing. One side of his house was a train track, and the other side was a factory. So he invented funk drumming from, so. The follow-up question is, can art making, music making be egoless?
I think it always is, in a way. I mean, the way we perform it and act on it and enact it is very much ego, of course, with great makeup or whatever outfits and posing and all that kind of air, the guitar, big move. But in a way, what we're producing, what we're making is an expression of so much more that we think we are. And again, I think that's what musicians say when they say, look, I'm just tapping into something, I'm just a vehicle. Is that what they're feeling when you're making music? You feel all this stuff coming up, and you can't rationally deduct where that came from. It's like when I later on read something that I ever wrote in a book of mine, or a piece of music that I make with my band, it's like, how did I come up with that shit, right? I mean, whether it's good or bad. And of course, I came up with it because I am a product of all kinds of other stuff that flows through me. But it's almost like it feels too big, and it's because we sometimes we're so focused on our ego that we don't realize that we're just made up out of everything and everyone around us, and that's who we really are, not this ego thing.
Dude, you are touching deep into my psyche and touching on. It's really good, because I was listening to the radio in the middle of the night once, and this song came on. I was like, this is fucking great. And then I realized I produced it, and I was like, how could you not know that was you? I was like, wow. And it was a great moment, to like. Now, the follow-up to the can art making be egoless is, was Freud right?
About? He said a lot of things.
See, you're asking a question to a question. You win, Mark. That's what it's all about, inventing new questions.
I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry. That's what, in general, was Freud right?
How incredibly important the feeling of uncanniness is in our culture. I think that was his most significant contribution. That essay, Das Unbehagen des Kultur, the uncanniness in our culture. Is this sort of this sense of when things that we assume are always a certain way become something else, and we can't really place it, and it freaks us out, which is of course a very specific feeling in the context of technology, and how important that feeling is. That feeling opens up a way of understanding that otherwise would stay hidden. So uncanniness.
I like that. I asked a famous movie director this in front of a big crowd, and he goes, "That's beyond my pay grade." And then eventually returned to talking about Freud. Okay, how does this question that McLuhan asked make you feel? I'm not even asking you to answer it. I'm just saying, how does it make you feel? How about technologies as the collective unconscious and art as the collective unconsciousness?
Can you repeat that? Sorry,
Yeah,
Jerry.
it's deep because it's basically separating art and technology. He says art does this, maybe art does this, and technologies do this. He's also separating the word conscious and consciousness. So he goes, how about technologies as the collective unconscious and art as the collective unconsciousness?
Yeah, that's beautiful. It makes me happy. That makes me happy.
That's good. Let's not even answer it, Mark. You've already answered it in a lot of ways. Makes you happy is an amazing answer. We got to get back down our script, or we're never going to get through here. What's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
Light.
You can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. That's Audre Lorde. Yvonne Rainer said, you can if you expose the tools. What new tool do you suggest?
For like a physical tool or a conceptual
No,
tool or
in it's a
yeah.
good question. You put all the questions into the context you want. And when
Okay.
I ask a question and flower it up with a snappy quote before it, it doesn't mean you have to apply the quote.
Gotcha.
Because usually people go, do you mean to dismantle the master's house? I goes, well, if you want to apply that, you can.
I appreciate that. Okay, then the tool I would say is theoretical violence.
Wow, who invented that?
Jean Baudrillard. He made that point that theoretical violence, not truth, is the only answer that we have, which I think is really good.
What is it in layperson's terms?
So the notion is that I mean, he wrote in the 1980s about the influence of media on society, and he made the point. Of course, this was well before the World Wide Web and social media and all that. If media saturate a culture, that culture at some point won't have access to originals anymore. So whatever we see in the world, we will see it in terms of its media representation. So
Right.
you know, and a society without originals is a society without truth. You can't refer to a truth anymore because whatever you're going to find has been mediated in the first place. So the solution, the tool to participate in the world isn't truth. It's theoretical violence, or in terms of the Apple slogan, thinking differently.
Yeah.
And that's what we can do. And I think, and of course, he wrote this in, I think, 1981. We're in 2021. It's very clear that truth doesn't really matter anymore. So it's something else that really matters. And I think that's theoretical violence. That's our main tool. That's our key competence.
Yeah. Is that like the Disneyfication of things, and then we destroy Disneyland? Because by the word violent, is he mean go burn Disneyland down, or he means the theories when which is call it one of those guys like Benjamin talk about Disney? He means don't read Benjamin, don't burn Disneyland down.
Yeah, so that's the only problem that I have with these guys. I mean, they're great thinkers, but they're so damn pessimistic and elitist. But so I have no problems with Disneyland, but I do have problems with thinking that Disneyland is real. So in that sense, we need so the violence is about just forcing yourself to always consider another perspective.
Metaphoric violence, you're saying?
Yeah, it's metaphoric violence. It's a discursive violence. It's like, oh, that's interesting, but what about this?
Yeah.
So it's and to constantly be open to that, to never think that you know it, that you know how things are. That's for me my challenge, my tool.
Mark, you're so dang articulate, and I appreciate it because you can talk in street punk rock terms and in highbrow academic terms. And that's what I like. You can float between the two really well. But how does this Louis Buñuel quote make you feel? I'm for anyone who seeks the truth, but I part ways when they claim they found it.
Oh, that's beautiful. Oh, that's absolutely. I 100,000% side with that one.
But all you guys will love it. And most 99% people love that. And one person said that's bullshit. Because and he didn't mean bullshit. He just challenged it because we want to believe it because Buñuel was such an amazing surrealist and a truth seeker that why do we have to claim a destination or seek or name a destination when the journey's more important? He said the person who challenged the Buñuel quote was saying, no, he's saying, well, you can seek it, but you can't find it. Well, we can still find it because the things you've told me about never finding truth ring truthful to me right now.
There is a qualm that you could have with the Buñuel quotes, which is that why is truth so important?
Yeah.
Does it really matter? I mean, can it just be a good story? Or,
yeah, because when you say theoretical violence, dude, he did it in Los Olvidados. Those little street punks were kicking and beating up a blind guy. And, it's some radical shit. And we're all like, that's such a great movie. Well, dude, it's like, okay, so what do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
Whether I made the right choices.
Wow. McLuhan learned from Ezra Pound that artists are the antenna of the race. They're broadcasting and detecting the hidden psychic events of our inventions. So we don't know what Squid Game's doing to us. We survey it, but there's a hidden psychic thing that's changing us, shaping our behavior. And maybe some of us are detecting it, but most of those gazillion people around the world are embracing it without really understanding how it's shaping their behavior. So Marshall said, even if we look to the artists to reveal the hidden psychic effects so that we can learn to cope with what we don't like, why do we still ignore them? Why do we ignore the hidden psychic effects, even though we can look to the artist to broadcast them to us?
I think it's like Nietzsche said, if you stare into the abyss, at some point the abyss stares back to you. And I think we're scared of that.
Scared, yeah. I knew you were going to say fear. Thank you. Are you more afraid of new ideas or more afraid of old ideas?
Oh, I'm afraid of old ideas.
Yeah. Can you conjure up your earliest memory ever or one of them?
That's hard. I had a major bicycle accident when I was 12, and anything I remember from before that time, I'm not sure whether that's a memory or a story that like somebody told me about me. So in that sense, I remember the accident, but I from anything before that time, I'm just not entirely sure.
Is memory more a curse or more a blessing?
It's a curse if you think that that's what's really happened.
Wow. You remind you a lot of your sensibility reminds me of this great Subgenius quote: "Pull the wool over your own eyes." Does that resonate with you? Do you understand?
It does actually. Yeah, that's beautiful.
It's sort of like what you talk to Henry Jenkins about a lot is user as content. That McLuhan mid-career abandoned sort of the medium as the message or the medium as massage and changed it to the user as the content.
Right.
Which is funny because Marshall got all his chops from Finnegan's Wake by James Joyce. And yesterday we're reading Finnegan's Wake. We're on page 496 out loud with a group of people. And the line comes up, his producers, are they not his consumers? With a
Wow.
question. What does that mean to you? Just you don't have to know anything, just that line isolated. His producers, are they not his consumers? What does that mean to you? Just off the top of your head.
It means that there's an intrinsic reciprocity in everything we do and everything we think we are, right? That we are not operating or living in a vacuum. We are not contained inside ourselves, whether that inside is our bodies or whatever. That we are always an interaction with an environment and produced by that environment as much as that we consume that environment, whether that is expressed through language or communication or media or anything else. But I like that idea, is that this sort of like this feeling of total connection and you know, that the boundary that we construct around us, whether we call that an aura or simply the boundary of our physical bodies, is a construct.
Yeah.
That's not who we are.
Yeah. It's amazing. And it's amazing Marshall used that term, user as the content. But here is the flip. I read that and I goes, holy moly, I've been misquoting that for 25 years. So I've quoted it from Marshall, putting it in the book Understanding Media and putting it in the book Take Today, the Executive's Dropout, and he switched it. He says, as Joyce says, my consumers, are they not my producers?
Right.
Now that's I love to fuck around with quotes and change them a little, or sometimes I do it by memory loss or whatever. But do you think that means the same thing? He changed the word his to my, so he's saying my consumers, are they not my producers?
I think you can argue that it still means the same thing. Yeah.
Same thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what Clinton said too. So you got you it must be right because I got two brainiac McLuhanites tell me. It's okay, Marshall fucked with Joyce. Okay, Mark,
He meant
growing
well.
up. Yeah. Yeah, you know, when the Marshall was a total put on artist, man. He's, you know, you mean my whole fallacy's wrong? So tell me a role model within your immediate family, someone who had an impact on you, just briefly, and what was that impact? And then the second part is outside your immediate family.
A role model in my immediate family would be my dad.
And what'd you get from?
Playing the bass.
Wow, that is cool.
Yeah.
What kind of music was he playing?
He would play rhythm and blues, big band, and a little bit of rock and roll. And but the thing is, I didn't like learn to play bass from him or something like that. But you know, he's well into his 70s, and his bass guitars are still mean the world to him. And I think that is a great influence. That is a reminder of you know, whenever I get lost in, you know, academic stuff or being really in love with myself and my blah blah, it's like, no, it's the bass guitar. It's like the guitar, it's the music, it's the art, it's the having fun, and it's not taking yourself too seriously. That is what truly matters. And make sure that that's part of everything you do. And I think I got that from him.
It's really beautiful because it's both the tool and the sensibility of having fun.
Exactly.
So Mark, outside your immediate family, someone who had impact or role model-ish, what'd you get from them?
I think the first person I think of is Henry Rollins.
You're kidding. Dude, I've been trying to interview him for like 30 years.
All right. Okay.
No, I mean he's right in our neighborhood. I mean, he reads poetry right down the street from us. We just haven't crossed paths, but I bet. So what'd you get from Henry?
Well, I've had the privilege of meeting him a couple of times. I actually once asked him to write the foreword of my PhD dissertation.
Oh, did he say yes?
Well, he said, I don't have time to write, but you can interview me and put that in the book. And I did interview him, but I ended up not putting it in the book because it was just too different,
Yeah.
and it was anyways. But I had a great time, and I've had so many encounters that were just. My favorite encounter was on or just before Christmas Eve. It was snowing. It was Amsterdam. He just did a spoken word show. A friend of mine and I were standing outside the venue, sort of, chatting how awesome it was. The door opens. Here comes Henry, in shorts, and again, it's snowing, Amsterdam, Christmas Eve, with a big bottle of water in one hand and a loaf of bread in the other hand, and sort of looking around like, okay, what am I gonna do now? So we had this great time chatting, and then at some point during that night, we all took out our T-shirts of our to show each other tattoos, because I have a tattoo of his on me and my friend as well, and then he showed us his, and so that was a magical moment. But no, so Henry, I mean, like for example, from that night, he has this big tattoo of his son on his back saying "Search and Destroy." And we were chatting, and I said, so what does that mean to you? And he said, it means that whatever I do, no matter how big or small, no matter how, it doesn't matter, anything I do, I give it all I've got. If I love someone, I love someone. If I hate somebody, I hate somebody. It's like you commit to whatever you're doing, whatever you're feeling. And that has always been like, for example, when I, as an academic, and I go somewhere to give a talk, and 3 students show up, and that's great. 3,000 students show up, that's great. It doesn't matter. I give it all I've got, and that's Henry right there. That sort of, just trust that it will be okay no matter what, and just be yourself and show it, and don't be afraid to.
So really amazing, because again, I'm going to jump ahead because it anticipates the first question I started interviewing people with 40 years ago. I got from Christine McKenna, who helped spawn, you might know it, she helped spawn Henry. She was the music journalist in the LA Weekly and in LA, helping develop the whole punk scene via journalism. And I got a lot of my questions from her, and she knows that I've interviewed her twice with her own questions. So I've got to ask you this question, although you've almost already answered it. She'd go, what's more important, conviction or compromise?
Conviction.
See, yeah, that's amazing. So we'll move on. This was good. Were you raised a particular religion?
No, my dad was Protestant and my mom Catholic, so they just left it at that to preserve the peace. So I was basically atheist.
Do you pray?
In a way, yes, I do.
If God exists, what would you like God to say to you after you die?
Welcome, have a seat, chill out.
Very good. Do evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
No, evil people exist.
Yeah. Mark, this question I'm going to set up with a few modern thinkers' thoughts. The question is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? Alan Watts says, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. Coppola stole from the mob and the samurais. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. JFK says, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. And Fellini says, I need an enemy. So it's a lot of thoughts. The basic question, how do you, Mark, advise someone to deal with an enemy? But first, how would you what is the Alan Watts quote? How does it make you feel? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
Yeah, I mean, acknowledge is quite generous. So in that sense, yes, it's empowering. But you can also simply be curious about the enemy. So that would be my way of dealing. I mean, an enemy makes me curious of how do you get to where you are? How does that, how do you get to those kind of convictions or that kind of behavior? Like what's behind that, and I would like to know. and not to judge or whatever. No matter, I mean, of course, things can be horrible, but yeah. So curiosity, that would be my way of dealing with an enemy.
Mark, it's good because a lot of my questions, what I like to do is analyze the verb in the question. And it's like with the tetrad, which was sort of the ground we first met on, like the first word in the question in the tetrad is, what does it intensify or enhance? And then someone go, well, it amplifies. And so I like the switching of words that we feel are similar. So you take it, changing acknowledge to being a curious is really a delight. James Joyce was the first projectionist in Dublin about 100 years ago. His cinema was called Volta Cinema, and he said he checked out. He said, this is stupid. Why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I can go outside and see a real tree? Years later, Faulkner said, sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism. Why do we have to recreate things in order to get them? Why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
Because a lot of stuff happens in between, and and we need people who are either committed or privileged enough to be able to go beyond the in between to show us what is really going on. And sometimes those people are journalists, and sometimes those people are artists. And I totally agree that it fundamentally doesn't matter whether it's fiction or nonfiction if it gets you closer to seeing things that you didn't see before.
Yeah. That's again McLuhan. He said the gap is where the action is, the in-betweenness. But there's something in humans we want to know, or Jean-Luc Godard says, I believe in beginnings, middles, and ends, but not necessarily in that order. So what first attracted you? Let's take your two paths, or maybe your three paths. Just walk us through a general history. You did journalism, then you became a bass player, and then you're now a professor. Let's call it that way. And then, so what first attracted you? If journalism was first, what first attracted you to say, I can do that? Like, are you reading punk magazines and going, I can do that? Or how did you find that route into being a journalist?
I said earlier in our interview that I had this bike accident when I was 12 or 13.
Right. Yeah.
And when it was really serious, but after about half a year in and out of hospital, I got back to school and I had all these nightmares. And then my doctor at the time said, why don't you write them down? So I wrote them down, and a friend of mine read them and said, you should publish this. Okay. So they ended up in the school newspaper. And for a brief moment, I became the most popular kid in school because apparently people thought the stories was really, so these were like horror stories or something. And that made me feel pretty good. And for some weird reason, I never wrote anything for the life of me before that accident. But I found out that A, I was good in writing, and B, that I was really enjoying it, and C, that it apparently had some kind of impact. And then journalism seemed the most a logical next step. So it was. Yeah.
But Mark, you didn't grow up reading. Your parents weren't reading and giving you the example of reading, telling you to read, or you didn't pick up reading on your own.
No. I mean, I read a lot as a kid, but my parents were not big readers or music listeners. They were hardworking, sort of blue collar couple. They were, but they didn't really. They loved to watch TV.
Right. So then you're seeing him play bass. Then you're saying, well, I can do that because he's your role model. Then what your history of music, did you start listening at 12 to the genre you're deep into, or how'd you get into punk rock and what led you there?
The so I distinctly remember, again, this was after the accident, getting some money for my birthday, and my mom said, "Why don't I take you to the shopping mall and you can buy a vinyl album? Like it would be my first album. You can buy anything you want." And I was browsing through the shelves and I saw this cover, and it was just blew my mind. It's like, I want this. I didn't know the band. I didn't know what it was. It was just this cover that just was epic. And it was the greatest hits of Black Sabbath.
Whoa.
And I never looked back. The next album was Iron Maiden, then it was Slayer, and then it was just off I went.
So you started in metal, because that's amazing. My friend plays bass, and his email is blacksabbathbass@gmail. and of course he's a Jocko clone. He's a Jocko wannabe.
Right.
Now it's sort of like you start with that riff, Paranoid riff, that is like it's all over with. So then did you go to college, and what did you study, and how'd you get into academia?
Well, I mean, I went to an applied program to get a BA in journalism so I could become a journalist. And I worked as a journalist for a while, and I kept studying history and but I wasn't really into studying all that much, but why not? And I moved to South Africa and worked there for a couple of years, and then I came back to the Netherlands, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't have I was cycling around Amsterdam with a backpack every night, sleeping at another friend's floor, and working as a secretary at law firms, so as a temp. And then I saw an ad in the local newspaper, like, we need somebody who's gonna interview journalists. And I was thinking, oh, I can do that, and that sounds like fun. And that turned out to be a PhD project. I didn't know what a PhD was.
Wow.
So I did that for 4 years, got my PhD, and then I thought, oh, and this teaching stuff is fun, and I like to interview people, and I like talking about it. And I moved to the US, and actually I moved to LA then, and worked at USC a couple of years, and then up in Indiana, and then became a professor, as you do.
Boy, what program did you study with at USC?
I worked at the Annenberg School, Annenberg School of Journalism.
I was just going to say, did you know Holly Willis?
Yeah. I was a Fulbright there.
Yeah, Holly's been a big supporter over the years in all my film festivals. So you picked a good one there. That's an amazing. So a screenwriting teacher told me that great art is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. Stanley Kubrick says the opposite. Great art or great film or great book is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker. What role does intention play in your creative process?
I think intention is really only important to me. So when I evaluate my own work, it's like I want to make sure that it feels how I felt when I wrote it.
Yeah.
Like if I was excited, or if I was concerned, or if I was sort of sad, or if I was just really happy. That's what and it's maybe weird to say that about academic work and about research, but I still feel that when an academic turns his or her work into a journal article, or into a book, or into a talk, then you're creating art. No matter how much formulas there exist for how you should write as an academic, it's art. I mean, you're creating something that wasn't there before. And then, it's about, I want to see my intention in the work, but it doesn't matter whether somebody else sees that. I mean, whatever they make of it, that's their thing. And I love to hear it. I mean, it's this beautiful thing that whenever you give a talk and students later on come on, it's like, I love it when you were talking about this. And I was like, I did not talk about that, but apparently that's what you got. Good on you, right?
Well, that is beautiful. And you really put it in the context that I want. You understood that what you do can be considered an art form, because we can switch it to music in a second. But I wanted you to answer this. When you're creating your lecture or you're writing your book,
Mhm.
how much are you thinking of your reader or your listener? Because
Oh.
Duchamp said, I said usually set up. Duchamp said, "There's no art without an audience."
Mhm.
So, how much are you thinking of them when you're writing your lecture or your book?
Well, I think it really depends. It really matters who your audience is. Like whenever I'm invited to give a talk somewhere, whenever I lecture to my students, whenever I'm writing a book, I mean, I feel it's my responsibility. But this is also because I'm also an educator. That I need to take their perspectives and their experience, especially experience, into consideration. Because, for example, if I don't talk to a student in terms of his or her experience, they won't learn anything from what I have to say, because it won't feel theirs. It will feel like this is my stuff that I now am cramming into their heads. That's not learning. That's indoctrination. But when I speak to them in terms of their experience and say like, hey, I know this is what you've been doing and this is what you're going through. How about looking at it from this angle? And they go like, huh, all right, I can do that. And then it becomes their knowledge, right? And then whatever they do with it, that's up to them. So in that sense, yes, I always consider an audience. That said, I mean, through amazing mentors that I've had as an academic, I have discovered that there's real power to finding your own voice, regardless of audience. So it's a delicate balance, because I think I found my voice when I write, but when other people read my work, they say, well, you write in a very accessible style. So apparently I'm still considering an audience without even being aware of it. Damn.
That's interesting. Now let's flip it to music. Those two questions:
Mm.
intention in your bass playing,
I'm there
and then
yeah. Sorry.
yeah, go ahead.
No, I mean, that's what I like about the bass. I'm there to support the other guys.
I see. Yeah. And
Yeah.
are you a composer? Do you guys do covers or you do originals?
We do our own music exclusively. The guitarist and I do write the music. He writes songs and I jam riffs. So I can't write songs, but I find a riff and then play it for 50 minutes, and then he turns it into a song.
Beautiful. And then how much are you guys thinking of your audience when you're writing your songs?
Um, uh, that's an interesting question. Our drummer always, we're a threesome. Our drummer always reminds us, like, hey, we also want to entertain people. Like, when we get too much in love with ourselves or with a certain song or part of a song or a certain complicated hook or whatever, he says, like, well, let's not forget that, we want to give people a good time too. It's like, all right, that doesn't mean commercial, because we're making just crap noise, whatever. But I actually appreciate that he reminds us about that, because I too, if I saw us, I wanted to be jumping around and doing, and not noticing, all this complicated music stuff.
Yeah, that's I was fortunate enough to work for Frank Zappa for 9.5 years, and he said a great thing. In order to be in the music business, you have to sell your cock and your balls.
Hmm.
True or false?
Yeah, but who are you selling it to? If it's the beautiful girl in front, fine.
It's like this guy who's a super rock star. He's the male version of Lana Del Rey. I asked him that, and he goes, "Gee, I thought you only had to sell your soul." So yeah, let's stay on music for a second. My other friend says the 3 T's, the tenets of music, are taste, theory, and technique. So you can know what chord you're playing, theory. You can, execute the right notes, technique. How does one acquire taste in music?
Just listening to anything and everything. And I mean, this again, Henry Rollins is a great inspiration there, right? He falls in love with almost any kind of music, and as long as it's pure and authentic and real, and so yeah, that's and not get locked in. Yeah.
Yeah. I know I've heard his radio shows and read his column. He likes the Shags and Beefheart and all the typical hardcore. Yeah, I mean, he really came out of LA hardcore punk. I mean,
Right.
he was one of those groundbreakers. I like punk because of its location. It's like, are you into DC punk or New York City or East Bay, San Francisco, or LA, you know? It's
Yeah.
like the Ramones playing in New York, in London, and spawning the Sex Pistols. That's a great, we
Yeah.
can do that. So,
Exactly.
and again, on the the phenomenon of Marshall saying everything we invent extends some humanness.
Mhm.
Clothing extends our skin. What does the bass guitar extend for you? What humanness?
What is that? The lower abdomen?
Nice. Yeah.
That nice fat that you accumulate over the years, and then push it forward unapologetically. Yeah.
Very good. So I spoke with this great director, Michael Apted,
Oh,
40
wow.
years ago. Rock, rock, MTV started. Can you believe that? Like 40 years ago. And
Yeah.
I said, why do rock video editors feel so obliged to edit fast? And most people don't know Abel Gance invented rapid montage in 1922, but it really became prominent right then, to the point where Marty Scorsese was saying, I cut my films faster because of MTV.
Mm.
So Michael said, well, we've learned to take in information faster. And I said, my question to you is, and it's asked with a bias, can humans literally learn to take in information faster, or are we just brainwashed to believe we can?
Um, well, I do agree that we underestimate our capacity to handle an extraordinary amount of information, right? I mean, there's this whole discourse about media or information overload,
Yeah.
which is actually nonsense. I mean, for the last 200 years, people have had access to too much information that they can handle, rationally speaking. However, we seem to be doing generally pretty okay. And the reason for that is that we all have, whether we come up with those strategies deliberate or not, information tactics
Yeah.
and the faster paced nature of the digital environment and digital editing and all that kind of stuff, it doesn't seem to phase us. Although I will also say that there's also a life phase aspect to this. I distinctly remember when I watched, I think, the third or the fourth Transformers movie, and then I realized I'm getting too old for this. And it was sort of the kind of editing pace that, like, this is now clearly not intended for me anymore.
Wow.
So it's but fundamentally, I do appreciate that. Yeah, we all have information handling tactics that can cope with quite an exhilarating amount of data.
Yeah, Mark, you're a good example of what's called comprehensive awareness. That's what McLuhan taught. Pattern recognition leads to the big picture, and
Right.
you're able to articulate that. And I appreciate it. But the hidden question to that is it literally possible for humans to multitask?
No.
Wow. There's no right or wrong answers to any of these questions, but that one you got right, dude. What was the motive of the cave artist? Your hunch, your impulse, your guess
The motive of this, sorry?
of the cave artist.
What was the motive? To prevent people from trying to find the exit.
Suss that out. I don't understand what you mean. They're in a cave, they're seeing the art.
Right.
What does that have to do with the X?
So the artist. I mean, I'm sorry. I'm just interpreting the metaphor, but it's like, you want to keep the people captivated. So
So they don't walk out of the cave. They're like, wow, I'm staying here.
this is way better.
That's like my friend. I always use this one. Um, my niece is watching TV, and it's the stupidest show you could imagine. I goes, why are you watching this? She goes, because nothing else is on. So most people go, that's stupid. And it's like, no, if you surrender yourself to vegging out on the couch for an hour to just stare at the TV, that's serving its purpose. So it doesn't matter what's on. So that's like the epitome of misinterpreting Marshall's medium as a massage or medium as a message.
Nice.
But on to artists. Do artists have a moral obligation?
To themselves.
Wow, that is good. You've accomplished a lot in your life. Rate these three elements: luck, skill, and ambition. What's the biggest, second, and third?
I think skill, ambition, luck. Because the reason why I don't put luck on the first is that luck is, I think, to a large extent, a function of privilege.
Yeah.
So I'm not too comfortable with celebrating it.
That is really good. A lot of people don't want to say skill first because they want to be humble. And it's like, no, skill in my question used to be, is ambition based more on fear or joy? And how would you answer that?
Joy.
Wow. And that's your observations of humans.
Well, it's what I see or hope to see in myself. That's how I teach. That's my philosophy of teaching and learning, and that you learn things because of joy and not because of a fear of not getting a diploma or something like that, or not getting the job or not getting the grade. And so yeah, that's why I'm choosing that one.
Yeah, that's interesting because I switched it to the first question because it's too easy, because everybody just said fear. Is ambition based on fear? And then I read, William Friedkin, who directed The Exorcist, he said, in Hollywood, skill and luck have nothing to do with it. It's all ambition. And I thought, well, my one friend said, no, there's a fourth one, necessity. But it's funny because I like, in regards to luck, you bringing that up, as Gary Player, the golfer, said, the more you practice, the luckier you get.
Yeah. Well, there you go. And you have to be, and if you can spend a lot of time practicing golf, you're pretty privileged. So
I love your thing, putting luck in function of privilege. That's heavy, dude. Okay, so T.S. Eliot said poetry is outing your inner dialogue. What language is your inner dialogue in?
It's sometimes Dutch and sometimes English.
But what form? I'm more metaphorically, what form is your inner consciousness in?
That's a good one. What form is my inner consciousness in? It's images.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's visuals. It's like, symbols. Yeah, scenes. Yeah.
Is perception reality?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That is good. Why is it so difficult for humans to consider the possibility that life may be pointless? I'm not trying to say life is pointless. I'm saying, why is it so hard for humans to consider that it might be pointless?
Because most of what they do because they were told to do it. And that doesn't make any sense. So the only way it makes sense if there's somehow a point to all of this. And the point could be to have a house or a mortgage or a partner or kids or and that's all beautiful. I mean, don't get it. But yeah, if you take that away, then why do anything? Or at least why follow orders? And that's perhaps a bit too radical to contemplate.
Yeah. It almost evokes the anarchy question. So Utah Phillips says anarchy is making rules for yourself and not other people. Who's entitled to make the rules. And now that's that entitled word. Someone said, don't use entitled there. Say, who should make the rules? So, that verb is still debatable, but you understand the question basically.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Who should make the rules, or who's entitled to make the rules? And I think that's again where I go back to where we started about being connected, and that there is no you that does anything. So the rules are always the product of connection. So it's collaborative, it's co-creative, it's ongoing, it's becoming, right? Rules can never be complete or set in stone or finished. Rules are collectively constituted on an ongoing basis.
I was talking to Andrew McLuhan, asking him all these questions last week, same question. Right. And we got off on a tangent talking about the tetrad, which is funny because that's how we sort of connected. Yeah. And he, a lot of these media ecology people, they sort of poo-poo Finnegan's Wake completely, or almost completely, but they also poo-poo the tetrad. They'll sort of drop it a little. But we've been doing tetrads in our group for like 20 years. We just take every new, like we'll do Squid Game tomorrow, or we'll do tetrads on things. And Andrew goes, the thing about the tetrad is the third question is, what does it retrieve? And it's a little, it's a harder question to actually answer. And I said, the third one is easy because every human invention retrieves the campfire, the watering hole, the mosh pit, the connection, that when we invent something, we have to share it with another person. Do you think that is legit? That every human invention is the purpose we make things is so we can connect to another person?
Yeah. I think everything stands in the service of connection. I mean, it may seem to be something else, but it is always about connection. Every work of art, every tool, every technology. Yeah.
Lewis Carroll said, I believe as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast. Have you believed in any impossible things lately?
Yeah, of course.
Name one.
Okay, this sounds maybe very hippie-ish, I don't know, but that you can truly be with anybody else, like in a partnership, in a relationship, in a friendship, in any kind of whatever, and be perfectly happy and content and with that person, without ever feeling the need to get to know them. And what I mean with that is that there's this absolutely phenomenal American media philosopher. Maybe you may have heard of him, John Durham Peters.
Don't know him, but go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, he wrote a book in 1999 called "Speaking into the Air," which I think is I think you'll love it. It's absolutely an amazing book. I warmly recommend it to anybody who's listening, who's watching. But and he makes this point that in our Western culture we're so obsessed with communication. Like we everything is about communication. If a couple goes to therapy, it says like you need to communicate. You need to talk more, and you have to talk, and you have to express yourself, and self-expression, and it's all communicate. The problem, however, with that privileging of communication is that if you say to people like the best thing you can do is to communicate, what you're actually expecting them to do is to compromise. Yeah. Right. Is that in order for you and I to really understand and appreciate and start loving each other, we need to sort of figure out who the other person is and then get closer, achieve some kind of consensus, agreement, which inevitably entails one or both of us compromising, surrendering a little bit of what we think and what we believe to get closer to the other. And that's privileged in our culture.
Yes.
But what if that is the big problem? Why can't we just let that go and just say, here's this person, whoever he or she is, this is a complete alien to me, and I love it. It's fine. I don't have to get closer to it and then compromise. I don't have to explain myself. I can just absolutely adore this person for the utter and complete weirdo that he or she is.
Yeah.
And that's true love. Not togetherness, but alienness. And so what would the world look like if we all loved each other for that, for being different rather than for trying to be similar? And so that's an impossible thing that I was thinking about today when I was chatting with somebody.
Yeah, Mark, it inspired me to write my next article for our local newspaper, because I wrote an article this month on the exact opposite of that, because that's what I do. I go around and talk to people, and I start interviewing them, and then my friends will apologize and go, Jerry, always asking you all this stuff. So I'm talking to one of my best friends ever, 40 years in Venice. And I'm saying his sister's about to show up. And I said, so, well, what part of towns has she lived in, in LA? And he goes, this is idle curiosity on your part. I'm not talking to you about it. And I was like, idle curiosity. That's all I am, is idle curiosity. But it really evoked Bob Dylan, one of my favorite lines. He learned from the Bible, never tell anyone everything you know. So whenever I meet young people, or even people my age, and they're showing curiosity, I'll tell them everything I know. And I'm like, okay, we got to make a movie together. We do a project together. And they're all like, whoa. So I have to read that book, Speaking into the Air.
Yeah.
So tell me one major element of your creative process, your output, that's changed since you started, and one major element that stayed the same.
I think what has really changed is that when I started out as trying to be an academic and all that, the concepts and the theories and the research and the ideas and the stuff that I was teaching and writing about, those were like techniques, tools. There were objects that I picked up and showed to people and to myself. And I don't think I really understood any of it. Yeah. And I think what has changed is that right now I feel them. And I still don't understand all of them, but I don't worry about that anymore. But now when I talk, when I write, when I speak, I actually feel it. And it's made me find my voice and feel more authentic. And I know that the impact I have on students is not, profound wisdom, but an energy of like excitement and enthusiasm and hey, I can do this. So that has really changed. Yeah. What has stayed the same is I think look, everything I do, all my work, all my research is about a very simple fundamental question: is what enables people to be creative?
Yeah.
And whether those people are journalists or when I was working in LA, people in the TV and film industry, or media professionals in general, or students or whatever, or my colleagues, how can you be creative given all the other demands on your life, on your time, on your and so that question is still something that I can get truly excited about, to think about, to answer, to talk with people, to ask questions about. That has never ever changed. I think for me it's a very life-affirming question, and that has always been the same.
Beautiful, because just off the top of your head, is the creative impulse more the muse, whatever you want to define that as, or more DNA? Just your hunch right off the top.
I think it's DNA.
Yeah.
I think it's in intrinsic to every single not human, but every single life form. It's just
Yeah.
that we all express it and differently, obviously.
Yeah. Because what you also evoked in that was McLuhan's sense of how important the symbolists were. So Edgar Allan Poe invented the detective novel. He says, I'm only going to tell you so much, so you will think you're smart and fill in the missing blank. So then these spawned the symbolists. The symbolists spawned Kurt Cobain, Bob Dylan, Patti Smith, and Jim Morrison, all the rock poets who really are following Mallarmé, who said, don't paint the thing itself, paint the effect it produces. So it's the, effects precede the cause was McLuhan's main thing. So you're understanding, what your switch was. I feel. It's more about feeling, but you're in academia where it's the opposite. It's like the opposite of percept and concept. So Donald Field said it so well. He said McLuhan teased people to believe his percepts were concepts. So that's like you're like, oh, this is, you say these linear things, but in essence, they're feelings. But you can't do that in college. Well, I'm not saying you, but academia has that more of that sense. So Moshe Feldenkrais works with healing and movement. He says it's literally possible to identify a weakness and incorporate it to become a strength. Tell me a weakness that you've incorporated to become a strength, or in the McLuhan world, we call it a breakdown that turned into a breakthrough.
A personal weakness?
Yeah. Yeah.
I fall in love way too easily. And the strength is that it makes me permanently and authentically, because I can't control it, curious.
Right. That's good.
And I'm never satisfied with the theory I have.
Right. Are you a romantic?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Where'd you get that? From the way your parents raised you or on your own?
Yeah, I think and partly, how I was raised, and losing myself in fantasy, not fantasy worlds, but it's a really good question. But it's interesting. You mentioned Edgar Allan Poe. Edgar Allan Poe, E.T.A. Hoffman, that kind of literature, that kind of sort of weird, eerie imagination, and sort of there's an intrinsic beauty to everything, and like those kind of things that it's my especially my dad has that sort of a fundamental appreciation for beauty in something tiny and minute, he was naive. He is naive, but I think it's absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
And that must be there must be the seeds are right there. Yeah.
Mark, fill in the blank. Anger can be a productive emotion when
it's part of love.
Yeah. What's the most significant difference between women and men, physical aside?
The most significant difference is the way they've been conditioned, like the gender expectation, right? That's the difference, which isn't a difference, but
no, that's a legit answer. What caused matriarchy?
What caused matriarchy? The absence of men.
That is a great. I asked Eric McLuhan the opposite. He says, "What caused patriarchy?" He said, "Men." but it's weird, this phenomenon that women are nurturing, they give birth. Maybe if they ran the world, we'd be better off. And then there's this funny little twist. I'm not saying I believe it, that the word mafia starts with the letters MA because women run the world, but they let men think they run the world. So it's just this phenomenon. It's almost like that subgenius, like, I'll let the men run the world because, then I can have more slack and have a better life because, so, and then you get screwed and you don't get paid the equal amount and all the other things. So, it's why do you think women go ahead?
No, it reminds me of, I mean, to quote Bill Burr, that stand-up comedian, I mean,
Yeah.
the reason why I get paid a little bit more than women is that for some fucked up reason, when we're on a boat and it starts sinking, you get to stay, you get to go into the life jackets, and I have to stay on the boat and drown. So it's hazard pay.
It's what pay?
Hazard pay. The couple of the bucks that men get more than women for the same job. It's like it's hazard pay. If the building's on fire, I have to stay behind.
That's
I love
funny. That's good. There's a saying that goes, you create what you resist. Bob Goldthwait, the comedian, morphed it as, you are what you hate. And James Joyce said, it's a curious thing how your mind is super saturated with the religion in which you say you disbelieve. Buñuel actually nailed it. He said, thank God I'm an atheist. So how do you react to this idea? You create what you resist. Not you, but one creates what one resists.
Yeah, of course. It's like it connects to what you said earlier about perception is reality. It's like, I mean, what we hate, what we don't like about ourselves, what we want to fight, becomes this object that we cannot see beyond anymore, and that inevitably becomes a mirror. Yes, yeah, that becomes all we see, and so then we become what we hate, or what we loathe, or what we despise. The trick is not to hate it.
Yep. How do you find peace of mind?
Ooh. Cuddling with my dog.
Oh, that is sweet, dude. If you were walking down the street today and you met yourself as a 12-year-old, what would you say to your 12-year-old self?
I would high five and say, it's gonna be all right.
Oh, dude, that is great. Should toilet paper come over the roll or under?
Over.
Why?
Off. Oh no, off. I mean, you don't have hair just here, right? You have to have hair.
If a publisher was to release your autobiography off the top of your head, what would the title be?
Part 1, the formative years.
They want to scent the glue in the binding. What smell?
Ooh, biltong. Do you know what biltong is?
Tell me.
It's like the South African version of beef jerky.
Wow.
It's like so much better. It is great. That's my crack. I promise you. I mean, I'm this close to being vegetarian. What keeps me from that is biltong.
How do you spell it?
Biltong. It's sort of a spicier, wetter version of dry jerky, a beef jerky, I would say. But smell.
Yeah, that's good. I want to check it out. If a statue was built in your honor, where would you want it displayed, and what would it be made of?
It would be made of ice, and it would be standing on the beach.
Nice. Tell me something good you never had and you never want.
A motorcycle.
Good. Never had it, never wanted. That's a good answer. Mark, if you were in a vat of vomit up to your neck and someone threw a bag of shit at your face, what would you do?
Oh my God. Yeah, I would take a dive.
It's really been fun. I'm going to ask you one more, and then we'll have Clinton jump in. Hope you can go a little more in 90 minutes. Is that okay? We can go over a little.
That's fine. Thanks for your time.
Oh, thank you. So Joseph Beuys said, make the secrets productive. Lou Welsh said, guard the secrets, constantly reveal them. But it was Thornton Wilder in 28. He says, art is confession. Art is the secret told. But art is not only the desire to tell one's secret, it's the desire to tell it and hide it at the same time. Mark, you've been generous. You laid your cards on the table for 90 minutes. I'm not implying you haven't answered this. What's it really all about for you?
What is it all about? You're gonna make me cry.
Oh, dude. Well,
No. But it's such a beautiful. I mean, how many people do you meet in life that have the audacity and the willingness and the open heart to ask you these kind of questions? I'm really thankful for that. So what is it really all about? It is really all about getting lost.
Yeah. Wow. You know, your talent is so good because you're articulate and you're brief. You know how many people expound on that. But I wanted to tell you, in doing this for 40 years, if I tear up or the other person tears up, I feel it's been a success. Now, there's a lot of them that haven't, but you did what Mike Kelly did. He turned to me in front of an audience and he goes, boo-hoo, I'm crying. He mocked his crying, but you just said it you really laid it on the table. That was beautiful. So, Clinton and I had such a ball turning Paulo's amazing event into a chat room live. It was so fun because of people like you and, Bernadette Bird Bowen. We had a ball with her and I asked her all those questions a couple weeks ago. So it's really been fun. What he enabled us all to do was turn Zoom events into Finnegan's Wake reading clubs and turning it into a live organism where there's many layers going on. It's just not the speaker, Zoomadelic looking at the screen and talking. So, Clinton, what do you got? It's so good to have you here because this guy is like mind-blowing, right?
Yeah, that was a provocative hour and a half. Thanks. And again, I'm really glad. Again, like you said, Paulo's event sort of brought all this stuff together. You might not have ESP, Mark, but Jerry and I do, because he anticipated stuff I was writing down before I even got here. Jerry asked you, what is the motive of the cave artist? And you said to prevent people from trying to find the exit, which is great. They want to keep people captivated. And I took a note there. I said, is that a moral imperative? And after I wrote that, Jerry asked you if artists have a moral obligation. To which you said, to themselves. Now, I read ahead a little bit. You've got an essay called Media Life, and the main metaphor is the Truman Show, where Truman eventually realizes he's in a simulation and he tries to find the exit. And you sort of argue that that's not the optimal solution to the story.
Right.
And I think that theme sort of came up throughout this entire ongoing story here. So a question I've been asking people in these after parts here, which is especially relevant here, is I think in a new way, is the question. Jerry's heard it a few times. What's the difference between individuation and alienation?
So the way I understand that over there, I would interpret that individuation is when you make something, a knowledge, an idea, a belief, a skill, your own. And that doesn't mean like you copying it or something, but just you learn it, you adapt it, you tweak it so it works for you. And I think alienation is when you lose yourself in the learning. Like when it's not anymore yours or theirs, that it doesn't matter where it came from or where you are or what is going on. So an alienation tends to be considered normatively as a bad thing, right? As a loss of self. Right? And like in the final question that Jerry asked, like, what it's all about, it's getting lost. So you'll appreciate that I actually prefer alienation over individuation.
That's even more provocative. That's fantastic. Yeah, because you brought up John Durham Peters there, and this idea of loving the alien as alien.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's right. And yet, I've been reading lots of like early cybernetics books lately.
Yeah.
So this idea of complex systems and then modeling human relations and human networks as complex systems. That seems to be the one size fits all approach to trying to understand nearly anything and everything for the past 60, 70 years of our technological mediated age. So are aliens outside of the system, or are they just completely lost as to what their effects and their place are within it?
No, I think the look, alien is not not a sense of like, you know, little green men with big heads.
Oh, yeah, right, certainly.
But alien is, to be alien is also more like a sensation or a feeling. But I think that following your analogy of the complex systems, what the beauty of that way of thinking is, of course, and that's what the media ecologists do as well, right? Is to first of all to consider everything in connection, and to keep on looking at the whole rather than its parts, and then what complex theory or complex systems theory helps us do is to help us appreciate how everything keeps moving. Why isn't everything just falling apart all the time? Like, because that's my problem with the normative idea about alienation, like Hannah Arendt would talk about. Is like, you know, is that it suggests that we're always falling apart, that everything is all falling apart, but it clearly isn't. Somehow the whole system keeps moving, both the system of nature, both the human system, everything keeps kind of like more or less holding it together. And the mechanism that keeps things together, that's what complex systems teaches us, is self-organization, right? Yes. Is and so in other words, what is necessary for things to keep moving is to be both coherent in and of themselves, but always open to connection with others. The moment anything in life, a cell, a human being, a flower, whatever, closes off interaction with its environment, it dies instantly. I mean, that life is. What's the worst punishment beyond the death penalty that we can give to a human being? Which is solitary confinement, right? That's even worse than a death penalty almost. And it's not for nothing, right? It's the moment you disconnect from the system, something dies. And because that's what keeps everything moving, is that nothing is ever coherent in and of itself. It's always coupled with everything else. So the strength of everything is in the coupling, and which means losing yourself and surrender yourself to the coupling is actually the most vital or vitalist way of being. And if that is alienation, I'll sign up for it. I mean, I don't have a need for a coherent sense of self if that means I can be connected to everything about life around me.
That's pure punk rock, and not fucking Green Day and post-punk rock. That's the real street shit, dude. That is really good. But it's also, you know, you think that the death penalty and solitary confinement, the way, you know, I'm against the death penalty.
Yeah.
But people have a right to believe either way. And I understand. But it supposedly, one of the arguments is that it costs more to kill someone than keep them in jail. So it's like, keep them in solitary confinement. It's cheaper and it's worse on them. If you take what you just said, that's even scarier to think.
It really is.
And then you go to this thing which you brought up. Great questions, Clinton, was suspended judgment. That, you know, you say the word alienation, and if you go, that connotates negative. But alienation, especially with the words, so many like little green men, or people coming from other countries to live in my country and take my jobs. All these, like in America, we say Christopher Columbus was the first illegal alien.
Right.
But we have to celebrate his day. So if you have suspended judgment, that I see the homeless guy on the corner where I wait half my life, being a bike rider like you, Mark, I spend half my life waiting for the light to change at Lincoln in Venice. And so I'm seeing the world go by, and the homeless guy is sitting there stinky, smiling, and everybody in their cars are like this, tense. I was like, what's wrong with this picture? This guy's the happy one, and they're all in their big cars, and they're tense and anxious, and he's smiling. So wait a minute. What is this? Is this saying something? And then there's the billboard that's saying something that, is trying to connect the homeless person to reality. So, it's really, back to McLuhan, understanding relationships. It's that what you're sort of promoting, both of you guys, is can we understand this relationship or get lost in our understanding and not make a value judgment? But of course,
I'm glad you picked up on value judgments and suspended judgment, because where I took a note regarding those is when Mark said that the focusing too much on that which you hate, can sort of, what we focus on intensely can become a mirror, and it can become what you hate. And you said the trick is not to hate it. Now there's something paradoxical here, because to not hate something means to sort of gain a critical detachment from yourself and your environment and your natural emotion in relation to something, to try and back away from and gain a critical context and to be dispassionate, right? And that is to suspend your judgment, your value judgment of the other. So that's sort of like the creation of a gap as opposed to the creation of a connection. So I'm wondering if our talk about systems here can be as much about explicitly defined gaps and precisely not surrendering to the situation as an essential complementary paradoxical move here for making everything work towards the greater love angle.
I don't know. I mean, I think this notion of being able to sort of become dispassionate or take a step back and reflect, these are lovely ideas, but I don't think they are possible. I appreciate that you brought up complex systems theory, and I pitched this notion of self-organization, which is an idea that was coined by the Chilean biologist Humberto Maturana, who actually died earlier this year, and the theory of autopoiesis, and he makes this why did I wanted to invoke him about something that I'm now forgetting, but the point I'm trying to make is this notion of taking a step back and reflecting on things, being dispassionate. So the building block of his theories of complex systems and self-organization was this very simple notion of, he always said, everything said is said by an observer. In other words, there is no such thing that you can put outside of yourself and look at objectively or dispassionately, because you're observing it, and by observing it, you're changing it. And you're writing it down or you're expressing it, and that changes it too. So there is no way of being dispassionate, of taking a step back, of stepping outside, of being neutral, or that doesn't exist. So
you've reminded me of a very visceral memory I had. I've always thought in words, explicitly in words. That's the form of my thought, except for a few years ago when, I'd say, I switched very suddenly to thinking in images. And it was a terrible psychotic experience, right? But it was some of the most visceral learning experience of my life. And then finding the words to then capture that is what's sort of led us here in a way. There's this image I had of two wax blobs in a lava lamp. trying to pass one another and trying and forcing their way, but each terrified to actually loop and merge with the other one, or like two obese people trying to pass each other in a narrow hallway, right? All right, and so this is my idea of detachment: is being forced through and trying to pass, right? That's the image that I have when I think of maintaining this, right? Because it is truly, as you said, part of a larger system, and yet we're talking about nested systems, each with their own inner equilibrium, and then the larger outer system, right?
Right.
So sorry that I just had to share that idea because
that was so beautiful, Clinton, because Marina Abramovich, the performance art queen, has a piece with her first partner where you're going into the gallery. In the doorway is her naked and her boyfriend naked, and you have to squish between them to get in. So it's like evident, well, which one am I going to squish next to frontally? So it's like the two fat people, like that is an amazing, just to think that performance art piece up is great. It's like, I know which one I'm going to, but the other thing is you did a flip there, Mark, by saying the Chilean, what's the Chilean biologist's last name?
Maturana.
How you spell it?
Maturna. Oh, sorry, Urana. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you said his thing was brilliant. I want to look into it. Everything said is said by the observer. And just before you said that, you had a second brain blip. You forgot.
Right.
And I had one of those yesterday in a session with my friend, and he goes, those are the key to life. Sort of. He said, we can't acquire those consciously. And when we get them, we sort of like, oh, I have a memory problem, or it's a brain fart, or and you hope it will come back. And then it did for you. But to acquire that, empty your brain from thinking, like think about not thinking.
Spontaneous Buddhist meditation.
Yeah, you can't do it.
Like an instant.
Yeah. Like Frank Zappa said it best. He goes, nothing is what I want. But let's close out because this can go on forever. And Mark, we would definitely want to have you back because the way it works is the next one is called McLuhan Mashup, where Clinton's here the whole time, so we can really get more going on. And I would love to investigate the hate thing, because is hate more innate or more invented? Is hate culturally learned, or is it survival of the fittest? There's a million themes we could go into, but just in closing, these last two, Mark, thank you so much, is what's the healthiest cultural shift you see developing today?
The healthiest cultural shift, I would say it's that I see a lot of people around the world, and especially kids, collectively imagining a different world.
Yeah.
I see that in Greta Thunberg and her climate change. I see it in the kids in my classes. I see it in my stepson's school, and what they talk about. It's like they're like when they engage with each other on Minecraft or creative mode in Fortnite, or like they're imagining and making a different world, and that's a whole different type of activism than in the past, and it's imaginative, it's creative, and that makes me profoundly hopeful.
Yeah. And the last question is a follow-up, is what gives you the most optimism?
What gives me the most optimism? You asked me earlier, what would I say if I would bump into my 12-year-old self?
Yeah.
Right? And I said, I would high five and said, it's going to be all right. I think that this notion that, okay, all this stuff has happened. I mean, I'm 52 right now, so that's 40 years that we're talking about. And I've made stupid decisions. I made horrible mistakes. I fell down. I got back up. I had laughs. I had a lot of privilege and a lot of luck, which are the same. and all of that kind of stuff. But either way, it's all right. And
Yeah.
I mean, so there is some kind of energy that keeps it together. And that I that gives me hope, not just for myself, but in general, for the planet, for the way we act together. There's something that keeps it together.
Mark, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. Clinton, thank you. Let's do it again soon. Really
Thank
lovely.
you. Really appreciate this, guys.